Hey, I am Trey Bolin, and I am here interviewing my friend Tim. We are all about origin stories here, and I love the fresh starts, new beginnings, the pivots that happen at the very beginning of business. So I can't wait to hear more of Tim and his story. So, welcome, Tim. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. So, Tim, what are you the developer of? What do you do?
I'm building a toy company. I invented a kids building toy system. So here we go.
That's amazing. So, what does your product do?
Yeah, so it's a connector for craft sticks. We people like to say don't reinvent the wheel. Well, we kind of reinvented the craft stick in a sense. But it's a friction fit connector that you friction fit onto craft sticks so you can connect them together and build things without using glue or tape. You could be super creative, take it apart, build something else, and kids can use them for years.
I love that. So, who are you finding uses this? You said kids, but do adults use your product as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, usually when we go to events, the kids are surrounding the table, but the parents will come up and they'll start putting it together, and then before you know it, they'll still be there when the kids are like, "Oh, I'm hungry. Let's go eat." So the kids definitely get super, or the adults definitely get super into it as well as the kids. But
I
it's
bet.
lots of fun.
That is lots of fun. Now, what's the most creative thing that you have seen done with your product?
Well, I would say I've been able to explore this more than most people because I'm the
Yeah.
developer,
Right?
and so for me, I've actually built a roller coaster design that is could be a working roller coaster if you actually built a car to go on the track, but it's a roller coaster track design. That would probably be the most in-depth, really cool design that's been developed so far.
That is super cool. So, it sounds like it utilizes like creativity and building and probably a little bit of a STEM.
Yes, it is a great STEM product. Teachers love it. Actually, we were just at an event this last Saturday, and I talked to so many people that are connected to public schools nearby, and they were like, "Oh, I want you to come do a presentation for my class. I want you to come meet these people and these people." So yeah, it's great for schools. It's a great STEM product.
That is awesome. Now, I'm so curious. How did this all happen? Where were you? What were these origins like? Because for me, I know that usually it's not just like, oh, I'm going to do this, done. There's usually like a process that leads up to it. What got you started in the thought process of, okay, I'm going to develop a toy for kids?
Yeah, first thing I want to say is I'm a super creative person. I grew up creative. I grew up homeschooled, and I would say I spent more time outside in the woods, exploring, creating tree houses, digging tunnels under the ground, like fishing, all
Yeah,
this different stuff, than I did actually in my house doing school. But I probably learned more hands-on than I did sitting down and doing paperwork. And this is where my
totally.
creative came from. I love to imagine things that could be but that I hadn't actually developed yet. Your imagination can run wild with things. And
Yes.
so it was actually a few years ago that I was working in the film industry, and I kind of came short on some projects that were developing, and they fell through, and I got
Mm,
stuck in the state of Ohio because I was traveling with my wife and kids, and I ended up starting a job working with this drone company, flying drones. And it was during that process, or during that time,
mm,
that I just got creative with a 3D printer they purchased, and
yeah,
I started creating some prototypes. And it was kind of, I would say it was by accident, but I believe
sure.
too many things happen for a reason in my life. And I've always looked back over my past and been like, wow, this wouldn't have happened if that didn't happen, and that didn't happen, and that didn't happen. And
Totally.
it's really, really incredible. And I believe God works through all of it.
Mhm.
But so I developed this idea and really wasn't thinking, hey, this could be something. But during that time, I spent about 6 months just messing around with it, just as kind of a
Yeah.
fun hobby, just building and 3D printing thousands and thousands of pieces. And we finally said, hey, this could actually be something. Let's
Yeah.
see. where the potential is. So we went out, started going to local STEAM events and getting it in front of kids, and they started playing with it, and they got so excited about it. And so that was the beginning
Yeah.
of like, okay, this could be something. Let's take it further.
That's incredible. And I'm curious, from that time of that 6 months where you were just trying out things, what do you think was the biggest thing that you learned during that time frame?
I would say from the beginning, it was probably just developing or fine tuning my skills. If
Mm,
you're like, okay, if this is gonna work, right? Anything you look at in life, you're like, if this is gonna work, let's figure out the best way to make it work,
yeah.
right? So during that time, it was kind of fine tuning my skills, doing a lot of troubleshooting, kind of doing some research here and there, which
Hmm.
are kind of really the beginning stages of anything. But
Right.
yeah.
So, did you go to school for something creative or was it something business? What was your foundation for like developing a toy? You said you were a creative person, you were in film. I'm curious what you went to school for. What's what did that look like?
Well, we've all heard those stories of these people who dropped out of school
Yeah.
and went and lived their dream, and then they become some of the richest people in the world. Not like being rich is my focus in life, but my point is that I never went to college. I never studied for anything specific. I
Hmm.
kind of I dragged through high school,
Yeah.
and I actually failed 3 years of pre-algebra before my parents said I could just quit.
Oh my
So
God.
I didn't even make it into algebra. I didn't even do all that stuff. And I actually learned more about complex math equations after I got out of school, because what I've discovered is for some kids, their way of learning is to understand the purpose as to why they are learning something, right?
Wow.
Most kids
Yeah.
don't understand the purpose. So if you have them sit down and try to fill something out on paper, but they see no purpose as to why they're trying to get these answers, it doesn't make sense to them. So it wasn't
So
until
true.
I kind of stepped out of that environment and started to see in the real world, how does this apply here? How does that apply there? That I started to pick it up quickly and go, okay, this is why I need to know this. This is why I need to know that. So I will
Yeah.
say this, every day of my life, I'm learning every day.
Yeah.
Like there's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new. And it's a lot of it's to help continually develop me, to develop my mind, to develop the way that I treat others, that I interact with others. And a lot of that goes back to just my time in the word and prayer
Yeah.
as well, because God is the foundation of everything I do. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, 100%.
I think that's awesome because as a fellow homeschooler, I was homeschooled as well. I told my parents in the middle of 10th grade, my brother's being homeschooled, and I think I would like a slice of that. That looks
Yeah.
like how I would like to approach learning. I want to learn on my own, like you were saying. And I really fell in love with teaching myself things that I was curious about and interested about. So I love hearing that part of your story and encouraging others out there that the traditional route isn't for everyone. And there's so much to be learned from, like you're saying, experience, from trying something. But whatever is happening to you, there is something that you can learn from that, right?
Yes. Yep. You can always learn something. I always like to say, I like to learn from other people's mistakes. I watch other people and see the mistakes that they make and decide I don't want to do that. Right. But we still all tend to make our own mistakes, and we're going to learn from
Mhm.
everything, never, whatever it is. Right. But sometimes it's better to learn from other people's mistakes than yours, because you end up saving yourself more time and trouble.
Exactly, exactly. And I feel like as a firstborn, I was the one that was kind of making more of the mistakes, and my siblings were learning from me. But one way or another, it is good to learn from other people's mistakes or their successes. I've had several people that in business have mentored me, or in my spiritual life have said, like, okay, here's the path. Like, follow this path, not to success, but to kind of show the way that I needed to walk in. And I know that really helped me on my journey. So in that very beginning, you said that you were in film, and then you had the 6 months that you were kind of playing with things and trying out the 3D printer and taking your product to the next level. So, where was there other players in this piece of the business that you were working with?
Yeah. As I worked for this drone company and developed this product, I kind of grew in a relationship with these two guys that own this drone company.
Yeah,
And I got to the point after about 6 months messing around with this product where when we decided to push it out and see, what the potential was, that I went to these guys and I said, "Hey, what do you think about building a toy company together? Let's like
yeah.
create a partnership, right?" And at this point, I didn't see any red flags. And I'd been working for
Mhm,
these guys for about a year and a half at this point.
mhm,
Um, and I enjoyed working for them, and they're great guys, and we believed in similar things. I wouldn't say we believed in all the same things, but there were at
mm.
that point a lot of things that they believed in that I didn't even know about at that point.
Okay.
I'd only known them for about a year and a half, and I didn't fully understand like how they operated their business either. So it wasn't until after
Mm,
that point that I began to see
yeah.
certain things develop. But yeah, so I began this partnership with these two guys, and it started out good, and over
Mm,
time it developed into something really kind of nasty and
yeah.
slimy, and so
Mm.
it was a little bit
That
rough.
Yeah, I think that can be a challenge. So I know you had some hiccups in the beginning. So my question for you would be, how can you make sure that you don't end up in that place? Not for you, but maybe for someone that's following along and like they're about to get into a partnership. Were there some red flags or maybe some questions to consider as you're entering into a partnership to see if this is a good fit?
Yeah, so we all know that there can be good partnerships. There
Yeah,
can be. They exist in the world.
totally.
I did not have a good partnership. I
Mm,
would say the biggest thing to look out for if you're looking to get into a partnership is how willing people are to do things legally and to do them right, basically within a process. So if there's a process in which you're going to legally establish a company together, all
mm,
the terms need to be defined up front. All the
mm,
papers need to be signed, all the I's need to be dotted,
yeah.
all you need to go through everything and make sure that everything is clear. Just with any marriage, people say communication's number one. I would say it's the same with partnerships. Communication's number one. If there's issues communicating
Yeah.
with your partners, if they don't want to sit down and talk about it, and sometimes, and I will
Mm,
say I had this with my business partners, they would be like, "Oh, we don't have time. We're going to have to push it back," right? So they would claim that we'll deal with it in a week, we'll deal with it in 2 weeks,
mm,
whatever it was. And then when that
mm,
came around, they would say, "Oh, we don't have time. We're going to have to push it back again."
yeah.
And it got to the point with me where it was pushed back for a year and a half, 2 years, and they still
Wow.
weren't doing anything about it. And at that point, we were launching a product on the market. We were like a couple weeks away from launching product on the market, and not a single paper had been signed. Nothing had been legally agreed upon.
Mm,
And that was one of the biggest red flags. And then
yeah.
they came in and decided, "Hey, this is how we're going to run the show." And we
Mm,
were all in disagreement about it. And they
wow.
refused to come into agreement. And they basically pushed me back and said, "Yeah, anything you say doesn't matter."
Wow.
So, like I
What
said,
a
process
challenge.
legally. Make
Yeah.
sure you're doing a legal process, that you got all your chicks in a row, everything's lined up.
That sounds like great advice. And I know as a creative person, I am like, oh my gosh, let's do all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's that hard work that lay the foundation, have, your LLC, how you're going to run it, where's the income going, what's allotted to all the different things, the systems, the sometimes stuff that isn't fun for the creatives. I love that tip of like, get it out of the way, get it handled, make it legal. Like, what great advice, especially as someone is seeking to become a entrepreneur or looking to start a business, maybe with a partnership. I think we can kind of be naive sometimes to how things
Yeah.
should go. So I think that is great advice. The next question that I was looking forward to you answering was, how do you know when to get out? How do you know when it's like, this is not going well? You said that was like a warning sign of like, okay, they're putting off meeting, they don't want to do things legally. But what might be something else that would trigger someone to say, okay, it's time to cut and get out?
Yeah. So when I got into a partnership with these business partners, I think it was a number of months before I started seeing red flags.
Mm,
And I would go to my wife And I would actually, there were moments where I would get angry and upset about the way things were going in my
Mm,
partnership. And I would go home and I would kind of take it out on my wife and kids.
mm,
And my
love it.
wife began to bring these things up to me and say, "Hey, we can't
Mm,
live like this. You can't be coming home and, venting on me because of
yeah.
the experiences you have with your business partners. That's
Mm,
a red flag in itself,
yeah.
right?"
Totally.
And it was just that I wasn't making any progress in the process of communication, like I mentioned with my
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
partners. What I would say is the best way to figure out when to get out of a partnership. Number one, if red flags are starting to pop up, you want to get out as soon as possible. It
Yeah.
was beneficial to me to get out before any paperwork was signed. And I do believe it was God
Mm,
that didn't allow any paperwork to be signed, because
yeah.
it would have bound me to certain things, that would have caused me a lot of issues where I'm at currently.
Yeah.
And I would say, as soon as you start seeing red flags, it's a good
Mm,
idea to contact someone who's either been in business, who has had experiences like this,
mm,
or an attorney, right?
yeah.
And start asking questions. And that's what I did. I contacted an attorney and I just asked some questions. I said, these things are taking place. I named off a few different
Mm,
things between me and my partners that were taking place. And I said, am I crazy? Or is this
mhm,
actually, can this become an issue? What would this mean later down the road for our company? And so it
mm,
was about a year of time I spent going back and forth with an attorney, discussing different issues before he finally said, you need to step away from this. It's going to destroy you, your family, and your company. And
wow.
so get advice, get help. It's
Yeah.
always good to have counsel in these areas, especially when
Mhm.
you've never done it before, you've never experienced it before. 100%.
I love hearing that you went to your family or your family came to you, that it wasn't like you're standing alone and you're isolated and you don't have that outside support, but that your wife was like, hey, look, this is not healthy. And then getting that outside counsel to agree, like, yeah, this is going down the wrong path, getting that help to know, okay, this is not going in a good direction. We need to figure out how to end this, how to resolve this. So I know that these were challenging times, and I know that it was hard for your family, for yourself to kind of overcome these challenges. Looking back on that hardship, what do you think helped you to kind of rise above?
Well, I would say back when all the issues started to develop and my life started to take a downward turn, I was getting really desperate in my life. I was
Mm,
getting to a place where I was like, man, I feel horrible about myself. I feel horrible about who I am to my family, to my friends. I feel
mm,
like a hypocrite, because I couldn't live a life that was above all the noise and commotion and whatever was
mm,
going on. And I felt like pressed down by everything around me. I felt like the
mm,
pressure was on me. I started to feel depression. I started to feel anxiety, right? So when it comes to those places in your life, you have to find some place to get peace. You have to find some place to get breakthrough. And so it was around that time where I was just feeling too much pressure, and I just reached out to God and I said, God, I can't do this. If there's hope
mm,
for me, you're going to have to show me. You're going to have to show me how to love other people and
mm.
be the person you want me to be. And so
Yeah.
that day that I cried out to God, it was like that night God showed up. He spoke to me through a
Mm,
conversation with my mom, through a number of questions that I'd held on to for many years. And
mm,
he said, I've never condemned you. I've always been there for you. I've always loved you. And I've been here with my arms open. And that
mm,
night, God broke me. He broke me to the point where I just in tears. I was crying, and God changed me. Just within a few days, He started to work incredible things in me. I started to find peace. It's the best place
mm.
to find peace when you're going through a
Yeah.
stressful situation is with God. And
Yes, it
you can
is.
find relief and peace in a way without God, but it's never going to
Mhm.
last. It's
Yeah.
always going to be a very short thing, and then eventually you're going to be so deep in a hole. Oh, I'm knocking things over. You're going to be so deep in a hole that you're going to ask yourself, how did I get here? How did I get this far? What is going on? Right. And that's usually where people end up suicidal. They end up
Yeah.
in prison. They end up doing things they don't want to do. And everyone always asks themselves, how did I get here? How did I get
Mhm.
here?
Mhm.
But thankfully, God loves me. and he showed me that, and that's how I've been able to get through everything I've gotten through, even some of the attempted lawsuits that my old business partners have tried to bring against me since I split off from them, because I did split off from them.
Yeah.
There was a time and a day when God just gave me the peace to end the relationship and walk away,
Mm.
and that's what I did.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that encouragement. And sometimes it takes that devastation, that hardship, till we're at the end of ourselves and we're left with, okay, what can I do now? And we see in our brokenness how we can't earn a place with God, that God's entire plan for us from the beginning of time was to send his son Jesus to die on the cross for our sins and to take our place and to take that our sin on him,
yeah,
and that we can have redemption through him. And I know that he wants all of us to come to that point in time. I think it's really incredible. And thank you for sharing your story of where Jesus found you. I'm really encouraged by that. So as we're kind of wrapping up our time together, I'd love to know if there was a word of advice that you'd like to give to someone who is in your place, whether it be, as a father who is looking for an opportunity for his family, or maybe as a homeschooling dad, or maybe someone as an entrepreneur. What would be that word of advice that you'd want to give to someone today?
yeah. So it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about others. It's about loving others more than yourself.
Mm.
And one thing I've learned in life, in the business world, doesn't matter where you are in life. If your focus is on yourself, you're always going to find yourself at a dead end. There's always going to be frustration. There's always going to be things you can't get past. But if your
Yeah.
focus is on others, if your focus is on putting others above yourself, whether it's your family, your friends, whether it's a complete stranger, then things will tend to pull themselves together. They
Mm.
will tend to work out because God works in those things.
Mm.
God has a purpose and a plan for those who live selflessly. And
Mm.
so, what I've learned, and the best advice that I really find, is that when you live to love others, then life works itself in a greater way in yourself, in your business, in your family, in these things that you do in your life.
Wow. Thank you so much for that encouragement. I really appreciate our conversation, navigating through those challenges, that not every origin story is like, oh, and everything went perfectly. Usually the origin story is kind of hard and we learn things along the way. So thanks for being so vulnerable and sharing with us. Now, before we go, do you have your products so that you can show us what the packaging looks like? I know I got really excited. I'm going to order some. I'm teaching a class this semester in our homeschooling co-op called Construction Zone. So I was like, well, I need to
Yeah.
get some of your toy. So where can people find your toy? Where can they purchase it? How can we get connected?
Yeah, so it's easy to find, and I'll show you this again. It's called Nurkl, N-U-R, oh, finger's going the wrong way, Nurkl. So the website
Awesome.
is nurkl.com, nurkl.com. We do have Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, all those as well. But at
Great.
nurkl.com, people can purchase the product, and we actually currently have a discount right now. If you use the code back to school, all one
Awesome.
word, no spaces, back to school, at the checkout, you can get 20%, or it's free shipping. You get
Oh,
free shipping.
sweet.
Um,
Awesome.
so use that code. I will show you this. I just built this one. This one's a rocket.
Oh my
It's a little
gosh.
over 3 feet long, but these actually
That's
connect
sweet.
to other popular building blocks too.
Nice.
Say the name. Don't want to get in
Very
trouble,
cool.
but you can build all kinds of amazing things, and it's lots of fun.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Tim. And I know I'm going to go out and grab a packet of Nurkl, or maybe two or three. But thanks so much for joining us. And